You hear what I'm telling you? In my mind, I created it. I told you, I created it, and it's real. Don't you understand?
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Struggle Session. I am Leslie Lee III. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether it's on Spreaker.com or if you're getting those our premium episodes ad-free at patreon.com/struggle session or sesh.plus or strugglesession.substack.com. You can find all those links at sesh.show, and hey, hit us up with a voicemail while you're there. Thank you so much for listening and supporting. We really appreciate it. And I am so excited today because we got a big episode, and I'm joined today by two of my pals, Jack and Aaron, today to talk about The Fifth Element.
Hell yeah, excited to be here and talk about this gem of a movie that I kind of forgot about for a little bit until I had a recent rewatch. Because I like the art a lot, and we'll talk about like some of the concept art and stuff, and a lot of that was like, I don't know, just kind of ingrained in my mind in the way I imagine like futuristic cities to look. But yeah, when it comes to the plot, I knew it was an orange-haired girl, and that was it. It's some cosmic sort of destiny, you know. But as far as that, yeah, I had no idea until I rewatched it what it actually was about.
I feel blessed because I think I caught this. I'm a little bit older than both of you, so I caught this movie at the exact right moment. Milla Jovovich hit me over the head as much as she hit Luc Besson, who ended up marrying her after this movie. So this movie is not one I ever forgot about. I think I wore out the HBO recorded VHS tape I had of this movie. I watched it over and over again, but I hadn't watched it in maybe, I don't know, 10 years for a span. It just is not in the popular consciousness the same way other films of this level that were big hits or that starred Bruce Willis. I mean, my God, we have to talk about Die Hard every goddamn Christmas, but nobody talks about The Fifth Element. It's a real shame. So, The Fifth Element from 1997, Luc Besson. This comes after The Professional. This is a big budget movie. It was a big deal. This was at a time where European movies weren't really competing at that level of the box office with American films. And so Luc Besson ended up getting this huge budget for the time, the biggest budget that a European film had ever received at the time, to make this big sci-fi epic, and it was a hit at the time. So it's kind of surprising that it didn't, it's not, really lingering in the culture, but it was like a big deal at the time.
Yeah. And you know what, too? I mean, again, I think there are a lot of like the visual aesthetics of the film that kind of like, borrowed a lot from cyberpunk and like, I don't know, I guess other things kind of floating around like visually at the time. But that, I think, besides that, like when you think about it, like a lot of the big sci-fi movies from the 90s, like this one, I feel like people will mention it for sure, yeah, but it's just one that kind of like for some reason that isn't talked about enough. And I mean, like when you're watching it, not only can you tell that the actors, like Bruce Willis, for example, is having a good time making the movie, but like it is an actually genuinely fun, positive movie. There's a lot of humor to it, and again, just visually is something that's so striking to me from the 90s being a kid, and also a little bit after it came out. But that some of the visual imagery really influenced me as like a writer, like later on.
All right, so The Fifth Element. In the colorful future, a cab driver unwittingly becomes the central figure in the search for a legendary cosmic weapon to keep evil and Mr. Zorg at bay. Directed by Luc Besson, written by Luc Besson and Robert Mark Kamen. Fun fact, this is actually a story idea that Luc Besson came up with when he was 13 years old. He had waited a while to make it. It stars Bruce Willis, of course, as Corbin Dallas, Milla Jovovich as Lilu. This was a star-making performance for her. I think she had already done Joan of Arc before this, but this is when she became like in the upper echelon, I believe. And of course, Gary Oldman as the unforgettable Zorg, Ian Holm as Cornelius, playing a sort of kind of an Obi-Wan, and he's having a good time. As opposed to
Alec Guinness hating every minute that he was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris Tucker as Ruby Rod. Another fun fact, I'm sure most people have heard this one, but the character of Ruby Rod, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more, was originally meant to be played by the one and only Prince. He like not even this wasn't just like a rumor. This wasn't just like Michael Jackson calling up Warner Brothers and saying he wants to play Morpheus in the Sandman movie. This was like actually going to happen, but it just conflicted with his touring schedule, so it didn't happen. Then the part ended up being jostled between either Jamie Foxx or Chris Tucker, and they just decided that our boy Jamie, who we're hoping gets better, was just a little bit too beefy. They said he was just too big to play Ruby Rod. They wanted something a little bit more sleek and slender.
Yeah, I just got to say too that Chris Tucker's performance in that movie is another unforgettable. Just him screeching and just sort of his like flamboyant, he's just getting it down with everybody like on that cruise ship or flight or whatever. And I mean, it was just another memorable experience. Really funny, man.
Takes over the movie. And R.I.P. Luke Perry makes a brief appearance in this movie, and he's really good in the first few minutes. It was very nice to see Luke Perry pop up in this in the 90s, because I think this was after 90210, and I didn't know if those kids were, going to have careers. But it was nice to see Luke pop up in this, and, of course, Tom Lister Jr. as the greatest president that's ever been presented on film in history.
Debo for president, man. That's all I kept thinking, like, when I was watching it. But he did really, not only like a bit of levity to it, but also like seriousness, right? Like this is a crisis, Like, I don't know. He was a good one of the best movie presidents, sci-fi movie presidents that I've seen, I gotta say.
And we have to say it's because he was playing against his usual type. And, his name is Tiny Lister. That's how he was usually listed. He's 6'5", big scary black man, okay? And usually, he's playing a big scary black man in movies. He's even the big scary black man in black movies.
Yeah.
Of course, in Depot in Friday. But in this movie, he gets to be someone, he gets to be the president of the United goddamn States. And I just thought that was cool. He gets to show off his intelligence and his tact. I thought that was really, really neat. Yeah. I have to say I was very disappointed when Christopher Nolan in The Dark Knight again cast him as a fucking convict, but that one turned out to be like kind of a subversion, so it was okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when he got the device to trigger the bomb, right, for the ship, and he didn't do it. Yeah,
he got the Joker's bomb key.
People know John Gerard, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the cartoonist Mobius. He was one of the concept artists for the film. So the InCal, which is one of his comics, Jodorowsky's graphic novel that Mobius illustrated, when you're looking at scenes of the cities, right, these kind of like these huge skyscrapers with these thousands, hundreds of flying cars. And I think in the first scene, the main character jumps off of a balcony and he's falling in between these cars. The plot similarities, maybe just a little bit, but Mobius actually ended up suing Luc Besson, and and I think in the 2000s, and they denounced the quote obvious borrowings from the title, the sets, scenes, the characters, and the graphic and script elements from the InCal. They claimed 13.1 million euros for unfair competition, 9 million euros in damages, and 2 to 5% of the net operating income. And also Jodorowsky, who's the scriptwriter of the comic strip, the InCal, he asked for 700,000 euros. But the interesting thing about it, though, is that Mobius, he was a concept artist on the film, so the lawsuit ended up falling through. And I was doing a little bit digging to see, because I haven't read that graphic novel. I was doing a little bit digging to see how much of it was similar to The Fifth Element. And I can't find who this quote is from, but someone says, many of the people who have already read the InCal in French ask if it inspired The Fifth Element. It hasn't been reported yet, but Humanoids, this is the publisher that published the InCal, is involved, which they were actually the ones that brought the lawsuit, the editor, right? It wasn't Mobius himself, but I guess on his behalf, right? Or I guess on the behalf of the intellectual property. But Humanoids is involved in a lawsuit right now with Luc Besson over The Fifth Element and the InCal. So these are some interesting panels that I'd be interested to get the graphic novel and watch the movie side by side. Someone says that in volumes 3 and 4, there are the exact same shots. In fact, one of the original French books was titled The Fifth Essence. And this person continues to go on and say that if you read volumes 3 and 4, you can sit down and watch The Fifth Element, and it's like reading a storyboard for the movie and comic book format. But just to close it out, to end that out, Mobius didn't end up getting anything from that because, I mean, not only, I guess, because he worked, it wasn't just because he worked on the film, but they found that the similarities weren't enough to legitimize plagiarism. But I just kind of think it's just a little bit interesting, I guess, that Luc Besson was so inspired by it, got Mobius, you know, to actually work on it, and then it kind of ended up getting muddy from there. But shout out to Mobius, rest in peace for his amazing concept work on this film.
Thinking about it, like Jodorowsky, in Cal, was Jodorowsky using some of his ideas, at least my understanding, from when he was trying to make Dune. And so if you think about it in that capacity, I'm like, so is Fifth Element like a photocopy of Dune?
Yeah.
Like, it just like...
Yeah. It's a little bit hard to say that, you know, one stole from the other. I mean, where I guess Luc Besson stole from Mobius, you know.
I do see Mobius in this movie, you know? I feel like even just like the way the world is, the way the costumes are, and especially, I would say, the weirdness of the aliens in their big armor,
Yes.
like the god aliens who show up at the beginning.
Yes. And also to Diva Plavaguna, which is portrayed by, I will pronounce her name right, Maiwen Lebesco. Amazing scene. Another iconic. I mean, I've always wanted that song that she sings like as an MP3 or something like that to listen to. But one of my favorite pieces of concept art from this movie that Mobius does is actually a little sketch of Plava Laguna, and it's I mean, it's just you see the translation from paper to screen in such a way that, like, yeah, it really does kind of look like a little bit inside of the mind of Mobius himself, you know, which which again makes the film, like, visually, aesthetically just very pleasing for me to watch. Pleasing to watch when I was younger, especially, you know.
The visuals are so good that I don't even mean this as a complaint, because I think the movie is very good. The visuals are so good that it does make you forgive some of the times when the plot is too convenient or doesn't really make a lot of sense. You know, the one moment when rewatching this was I was like, okay, so I'm on board. Fine. She came from the hand of one of these aliens, and that's the DNA that made her into Mila Jovovich.
Yeah, she just happens to be reconstructed to a hot humanoid. Okay, sure, fine.
I'll take it,
Yeah.
sure. She jumps out of the window. She ends up in this guy's cab. I'm like, okay, I like, you know, the random chance encounter. When it gets a little bit like, huh? Wait, really? Is the guy whose cab she landed in randomly, and he drops her off to help, is also the army guy that the army decides to task to go to this special planet. I was like, that was the moment for me, and I was like, okay, that's like a stretch slightly too far for me, but I'm so on board with seeing all this that I'm okay with it.
But Jack, don't you think they want you to know that that's ridiculous? Like, it's meant to be funny. Like, I think it's kind of like a deliberate, I think he knows the audience knows that, like, because they didn't need to do it, right? They didn't need to have him also be the army guy for the plot to work. It was just like a funny thing to, like, have him put his boss in in that same scene, like, he puts his boss in the freezer.
Oh, yeah, I
Yes.
thought he killed him at
and
first.
he comes out and he has frosticles.
Yeah.
So, like, the movie is, like, cartoonish in a lot of times.
And that's what I'm saying, is I kind of like that. I like it not taking itself too seriously. Like, he could have just, you know, ended up with taking Lilu there for whatever other reason. But yeah, I kind of like this has a sort of 90s irreverence, you know, for not everything needs to make sense.
Movies used to just happen.
Yeah.
They just were the movie,
They were just a
and
vibe.
they happened.
That's true. They were very much a vibe. This is true. You know what else I was thinking too is just like how how silly the movie was, like in certain, like, just little aspects. I remember there's one point where they're flying in New York and they stop at a McDonald's or something like that, you know? And just like, you know, it kind of also reminds me of like why I guess I enjoy like 90s Trek or Babylon 5, because one, the set design is amazing, right? The instead of using like CGI, especially for aliens, right? But also too, just that they didn't take themselves too seriously. Not to say there weren't serious episodes or there weren't serious themes. And I do think, like, you know, to some extent, like Fifth Element does have, you know, serious themes about war and humanity and like love, and we'll talk about that. But it was a fun film, man. It didn't take itself too seriously, you know.
This is my problem even with sci-fi sort of post the year 2000 is it's all dystopian. You know what I mean? Like this is even this I actually don't even know if this is dystopian now that I think about it. I'm like, I
Well,
guess this guy has to work as is like getting screwed over and has to work as a taxi driver, but I'm like it's not so fucking dour as like your Blade Runner 2038 or even like new Star Trek, like everything has to be so post-apocalyptic feeling now.
Well, I think this is relative, Jack, because I think people did not like the idea of like living in like, really small apartments, getting gouged, constantly being advertised to everywhere you go. But now we've just accepted that that's like, that we'll be lucky if we get to that point. Like everybody having an assault rifle, like that, like that's played like as a joke in this movie. And it's like, just like a lot of movies from the 90s, what was meant to be, seem very dark or dour, kind of like the ending of Fight Club, now in hindsight seems like kind of optimistic and joyful.
Yeah, you're so right, man. Because this film does portray like very much it does have kind of cyberpunk aesthetics in terms of corporations running everything and kind of like urban decay and whatnot. But at the same time, you could go to a McDonald's, you know what I'm saying, and get yourself a nice meal. Like there are aspects to the film like in the world that it exists in that are very much like a 90s sort of optimism that yeah, you guys are right that you don't really see in sci-fi or like sci-fi films these days.
When you realize that the restaurant that he's sitting at is actually just a flying cart outside his window. My God, they're flying cars in this movie. We know
Oh,
we ain't getting those.
I was like, when the restaurant came up to the window, I was like, so he has to live in a shitty little the bed thing. When I saw his bed, I'm sure that is something that they were like, oh, that's so dystopian that he has so little space that his bed has to like slide into the wall. I was kind of like, that seems like kind of like a good setup to have the bed slide into the wall. If I could have my bed slide in the wall, I'd have
You
a
get
lot
more
more
room,
space.
man.
I mean, it's bigger. His apartment is bigger than the tiny houses, and a tiny house in the middle of the woods. You're not getting, air delivery of like ramen.
And then I just have to say, man, there's a scene too where he wakes up in the morning and the cigarette vendor pops out and it vends him a cigarette and it says "Don't smoke." Like me as a smoker in the morning, man, that'd be very nice and remind me as well.
I think Jack, you said something about the effects and the visuals of the aliens
Mhm.
being very good. Luc Besson disagrees.
Mm.
He said this movie was a nightmare to film, and he hates the effects in it. He thinks the effects on the aliens with the alien masks are bad, and if that's not kooky enough for you, and we know Luc Besson is a pretty kooky guy. I mean, he's French and the director. Oh my God. He actually thinks the CGI effects on Valerian are much, much better. Was much happier with that than the Fifth Element. And Valerian, for people who don't know, because I don't think anybody does, and we reviewed it on the show, an early episode, but it was meant to be kind of this follow up to the Fifth Element, and it's terrible. It's like a really, really bad movie. I would not even recommend watching it just for the visuals, unless you're absolutely bored. But yeah, he does not like this. Luc Besson does not like the look of this film for some
Oh
reason.
wow, I know what movie you're talking about because that's with what's her name, Cara Delevingne, and
What's her name and what's his name?
really
Is
wanted
what
to,
is both
dude. I
of
really wanted to see it because it's also based on I guess a comic series by another. I cannot pronounce this guy's name, Jean-Claude Mézières, which is actually another concept artist with Mobius on the Fifth Element, and it looks so cool.
Yes.
That's the point. Disappointing to know that it sucks.
Yeah, so let's talk about the plot of the Fifth Element. And I dig the plot. And I dig it. And Luc Besson kind of explained what he was trying to do here. And he was trying to make sort of the anti-American blockbuster. He wanted to go in a different direction where he says that, American blockbusters, they always get bigger and bigger as they go along, more explosions, more people fighting, more war, etc., etc. He wanted to make this movie one that starts out really big with, this historical setting and this big cyberpunk city with flying cars. But then it gets really small to the point where it's just a man and the woman standing in front of each other, trying to love one another, and that's what the whole plot and world of the universe, and that's what the whole fate of the universe depends upon, as opposed to the typical American blockbuster, where the fate of the universe would depend upon like a fighter pilot shooting a missile into a spaceship.
Yeah. It's almost like telescopic, right? Like, or I guess microscope. I mean, it kind of like starts out. Yeah, it starts out wide and kind of narrows out, and it's also, I guess, poignant because that last scene when they're in the pyramid holding each other, right? Like, as opposed to how it starts. Yeah, I actually like that. Then, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
One thing I do like about it, it is complicated to start off with. Like it is it does ask a little bit of the audience. You have to pay attention to the first, 15 minutes of this movie fairly carefully.
Which are completely disconnected and don't feature any of the characters that appear in the rest of the movie. Like,
yes.
Yeah, it is kind of important to understand what's happening in that part.
So yeah, and it really shows us a little bit of the world, but there's this alien race, these higher beings that are trying to bring this, even higher being, this godlike entity to Earth for some reason to, save the galaxy. I even now I don't really can't really.
I think
explain
it's just God. I actually think that it's basically like there are aliens who like have a connection to God and they want to help bring God to Earth. Like God is real, and these aliens are helping to bring, and also to fight against like an evil that God can fight against.
And of course, the first thing humanity does is we let a corporation kill God, blow him up, blow her up until she's just like a hand, which is really kind of fucking dark to start a place for to start a movie, which is, by the way, PG-13. If for people who are surprised by the next scene where we do get the reconstructed body of Mila Jovovich completely nude in the PG-13 movie. They used to do that all the time.
And now she had little straps. She had little straps.
Oh no, the straps come later.
She was completely nude in that scene. The straps come later. Yeah, exactly. And it's PG-13, man. Jeez.
We used to be a country, a proper country.
I was just about to say, man, we used to be a country, man. We used to be a proper country.
But they bring back Mila Jovovich, and she's the coolest person that ever lived. The most important person that ever lived, and literal goddess. And I wanted to pick a pause to mention here that this movie is like the prototypical wife guy movie. In fact, we saw a lot more wife guy movies by her next husband, Paul W.S. Anderson, who made 6 Resident Evil movies about how cool Mila Jovovich is. You had Lynn Weissman doing all those underworld movies with, was it Kate
Beckinsale?
Kate Beckinsale. There have been a lot of great wife guy movies. There's been a little bit of online chatter about James Gunn's wife, who appears in the DC universe, and fans have been complaining, like, why you keep putting your wife in all these movies when you like fired Henry Cavill. And people were kind of defending, saying, wait a minute, you didn't complain when Luc Besson did it, you didn't complain what Paul W.S. Anderson did, you did. Well, then Weissman, they kind of went through the list, and the thing of it is, like, all those directors made movies about how their wives were the most beautiful, sexy, powerful, greatest beings on the planet. In James Gunn's DC universe, he made his wife an annoying pencil pusher who just gets in the way of everybody's fun. So I don't want to comment. I don't want to make a comment about their marriage or anything like that. I'm just saying, if you want to be a wife guy, you want to make a movie like The Fifth Element.
Yeah, where your wife gets to save the universe,
In order to save the universe, she ends up needing the help of the poor hapless Corbin Dallas, former Spec Ops soldier who's out of the game and is just a broke taxi driver, being nickeled and dimed by everyone and barely making ends meet.
Lives in the closet, has 1 point left. Although, I gotta say, like, his not only his kind of working class, but also like the fact that he's actually like a badass. Like that scene when that guy, when he first gets introduced, comes to his door to try to mug him, and like he laughs about it, and you see that, like, yeah, this guy like has like disarmed like dozens of people that have come to his door and tried this before. He's like a complete badass, but also like not like a macho man either, He's
doesn't give too much of a shit.
At the end of the day, he's Bruce Willis. He's movie star Bruce Willis, which I think is interesting because I feel like there's not a ton of sci-fi movies, if you actually went down the list, that actually feature a real deal movie star action hero in the lead, and that kind of I feel like that kind of sets this film apart because Bruce Willis obviously one of the most charismatic people to ever be on screen. Like every time you see him, you light up. I'm sorry, I don't feel the same way about say Adam Driver or Robert Pattinson or even most of the Chris's. You know, like having a having a Bruce Willis there or fucking what's the boy in Dune? What's the little boy in Dune?
Timothy Chalamet.
Chalamet, either the Timothys, you know, like you want to like compare them to Bruce Willis. Come on.
Nah, I mean it's incomparable, and I mean that's we have a lot of films that are adaptations now, you know, and these actors used to be like big action heroes, right? Like in individual or at least like in original films, right? Now they're being sort of subsumed by these characters. You can't say that about Bruce Willis, right? Like in this movie, like he is, I mean, for a minute I had to look up and see if this was an adaptation of something. That's how diseased my brain was, right? Having watched adaptations for the last like 20 fucking years, you know? But like, I mean, he's the star. I wouldn't say he's the only star of the film, but his presence, man, in every single scene, you can tell that he's having fun doing it. And he's a badass that you want to root for. And you want him to get the girl at the end, too.
And he is Bruce Willis, too. Like, that is, I think, kind of what you're getting at, too, is that it is like, you know, Timothée Chalamet, everyone's like, oh, he's kind of a good Paul Atreides. In this, it's just like, what if Bruce Willis was in the future?
Yeah, exactly. Not Corbin Dallas, Bruce Willis, exactly.
And of course, when we're talking about movie stars in this film, you gotta talk about Gary Oldman,
yes.
one of the all-time great villain portrayals. I absolutely love this character, this villain. I feel like we don't get villains like this anymore. We get villains who are just trying to like do the right thing in a really dour way. And this guy's just, I just want to make a bunch of money and I'm going to do it in a cool, sassy way.
Yeah. I just want to work for the cosmic evil, you know, and like have a nice pad, you know, and have a lot of babes. Like very simplistic, you know.
One thing I think does work about this, we were just talking about, you know, Bruce Willis plays Bruce Willis, and I think what makes that work so well is everybody else makes the biggest choice they've ever made in their career. You know, like Gary Oldman is doing the weirdest character. You know, they have Chris Tucker doing the weirdest character. Like Bruce Willis kind of just gets to be Bruce Willis, but everybody else is a cartoon.
Yeah, Jack, I'm so glad you said this because that's something I forget what I was listening to, but that is like the classic movie star trick, making everyone overact and you underact, and you just seem really, really fucking cool in comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we like Harrison Ford. You know what I mean? If you watch the original Star Wars, you're like, everybody's kind of goofy, but this guy seems cool. And that's like made his entire career, you know, that's even to today, he's just the guy that shows up in goofy places and acts like it's annoying.
You know, we've mentioned this movie might not be super enduring, but that's except for one thing. Some of the quotes from this movie still are around. You still see them. People still like saying Lilo Dallas multipass, you know. I like the not one, not two, not three, four stones. And people do post a meme of that that same scene with the aliens where they're showing off where he shows them the gun, which is just like such a great scene. I absolutely love it. One of the great villainous scenes where they show off the.
I will say, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was trying to watch for it, but I didn't see it. Does the gun not come back? Like the tracking gun that shoots a tracker and then the bullets chase it. I was like, that's gonna come back in the movie. I don't, unless I'm like just totally like had a brain fart. Like I don't think it comes back in the movie, which I thought was kind of weird.
The movie, look, Luc Besson doesn't care about that. Like he says it like he doesn't really like care about like the techie stuff. Like he says it in his very thick, you know, French accent. It's like, you know, the movie is not, you know, all these people around, all these millions of dollars. The movie is the 3 meters in front of you. You know, me, the cameraman, the two actors. That's to him. That's the movie. He was asked a question about like, what does it mean to go from making micro budget movies? Because when he started out, like he had to make a movie just by begging people to give him money. Nobody wanted to be the French movie scene. Like, did not like him and did not want him to make a movie. And when he made it made a bunch of money. And then, you know, it started getting bigger. But he never really changed his kind of idea of like, all that stuff, all the money does is buy you the stuff outside the 3 meters. In the 3 meters, that's what the actual movie is. So like the tracker thing like not coming back, that's so funny you mentioned it, Jack, because yeah, like in almost every movie, like we would have to see all the things he showed off in the weapon would be shown off later again and be super important, but like they're just not.
Yeah, especially like when I guess those aliens board the ship, right? You would assume that Corbin would be using all that high tech gear to defeat them, but it's like, nah, he doesn't need it. You know?
Yeah, just
In
guns.
fact-
Just we're back to guns.
Just gonna get
pretty
their
much.
actually gonna steal their guns after I fuck them up. Bruce Willis, technically Bruce Willis, classic.
The last fight scene has always felt to me kind of perfunctory. Like I don't like it's not bad, but like I'm so much more interested in everything else going on in the movie that sort of the fight scene between Bruce Willis and the aliens in the opera house, even though it's really great, I'm waiting to see the scene between Lilu and Corbin, you know, like that's the real like climax of the movie for me.
Yeah, no, agreed. And actually, too, the way it's a 2-hour film, and I forgot that it was that. Not that movies today aren't that long, but I mean, I'm thinking like it was an hour and a half, you know. And that act when they're actually at the opera house, you know, when they board the ship, wasn't expecting it, and yeah, I would say it was a bit perfunctory, but also too, it was kind of nice to see Lilu kick some ass, you know, because I forget that she's a badass, and that's also the part where the alien opera singer is going into that like kind of like I don't know, it's like a house music, like kind of like and like yeah, it's like an electronic
House
yeah, it's like a
opera.
house
House
opera kind of
opera,
thing, and
yeah.
she's kicking ass to it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that sequence is great. I agree that the Lilu fight is maybe a little more exciting than another, you know, balcony-based gunfight like we've seen in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, he needed to get out of there, and we need a little excitement in that moment.
Even though we needed to see Bruce Willis with his shirt sleeves ripped, you know.
Yeah.
That, like classic
It's in
Bruce
the
Willis.
contract. It's in the contract. He doesn't do the movie unless the sleeves come off.
All right, we did skip over a bit of the middle, but we're going to come back to it by talking about something this movie has that we don't see a lot of anymore. This movie is horny.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is super, super horny.
Yeah.
When we see, you know, Bruce Willis, there's lots of chemistry between Bruce Willis and Mila Jovovich. He's even talking on the phone about how hot he is for her at one point. He's talking to his friend. It's like, it's really romantic.
It is so funny in the middle of this action sci-fi movie that there's the scene where Bruce Willis like lays back on his bed like Sandra Dee in Grease or something, and it's like, I really like her, man.
It's one of the best scenes in the movie. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I'll just imagine him like laying his stomach with his knees like crossed, like his ankles crossed, like kicking his feet like a little schoolgirl giggling, you know?
It's so good. Yeah, I mean, and what's funny is you're like, this movie is horny, but that's not to say that there's actually a lot of sex in the movie. There isn't. It kind of actually is all about edging until the like very last moment when they do have sex. Like, it's horny, but not kind of in the HBO way of like having lots of sex scenes. There's just a horniness that pervades, which is kind of appealing.
But there is one exception.
There is one exception. I think I know what you're going to
Oh,
say,
yes,
Leslie. Go
yes,
ahead.
yes,
This scene is amazing.
Yes, of course.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Leslie. Go ahead.
I have to explain to kids who are young to this. All right. So here's the deal. Back for all movies made before like, you know, 2000 essentially. If someone got on their knees in front of another person and it cuts to their face of the other person having, you know, pleasurable things, as a kid, you just kind of didn't know what was going on. You were just like, what's
Another one of
happening?
those. Another one of those.
Yeah,
I
like
guess.
those scenes pop up in a lot of like PG-13 movies that you don't think about, and we have one here. And so I was old enough to know what was going on at the time, but like just watching it again, like, oh, that's one of those weird, you know, sex scenes that they would just put in movies that you would just never get now. Like, my God, they barely even kiss movies now.
Yeah. Like, is she tying a shoelace or something like that? Like, what's going on when I was a kid? But this is very, and it went on for a little bit too.
Yes.
It did.
Kids just had not seen infinite amounts of internet pornography, so things were different.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd seen maybe a little here and there, maybe some photos, JPEGs and things like that, but And that's another reason why there even was horniness in movies. Is that there wasn't just an infinite amount available at home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
And the studios weren't afraid to put horniness. God damn it, we need some horniness in sci-fi. Like you're telling me you're gonna go to space and not fuck aliens
and not be
Come on.
horny. Like, come on, man. You got to go the Riker route,
Riker in the just like Kirk, in the great lineage of Kirk.
Yeah, in the lineage of Kirk, indeed. But I just
Wait, Aaron, do they fuck in New Trek?
no. It's a completely sexless, man.
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
it's sexless.
How can you make a like every other episode of Star Trek is about like having sex? Like that's. So
I think the nurse is a little bit. She's probably the horniest, but her horniness is suppressed because she's like horny for Spock, who has no feelings for her. So yeah, so they even fucked that up. But I just wanted to say that scene that I'm thinking about is when Corbin and Lilu board the ship and it's leaving for that planet for the Floston Paradise or whatever, and as the pilots are getting ready to like put on all the gear and shit like that and put up the landing gear, Chris Tucker's character Ruby Rod is with a woman in, I guess, like this small space, man. And it's so, I mean, it's crude, man, but this is 90s sexual crude humor. As the landing gear pulls up from the plane, her legs also rise up. And I mean, it's just so crude and funny, and it goes on for so long that, like, I'm just like, yeah, man, you can't, like, I feel like if you put that in movies now, people would be mad about it. Or it would be like sexy, it would be sex in a way that's like completely de-eroticized, if that makes any sense,
I think it's the perfect storm of the '90s, a French guy. I think it's those two
really,
elements.
really, really, really super hot woman
Yes.
model, yes, who is also like a great fighter and a great actress. Mila Jovovich is absolutely wonderful. She's one of my favorite actors, like favorite actors, action stars, favorite actors. She even has like an album. She's like a pretty good singer too. I think Mila is like one of the greatest people. I won't even like. I do have to say she does have a nepo baby out there, but I think they're allowed. Mila and Paul are allowed one nepo, no more. Okay.
You know what I'll add to Mila too? I was looking on her Wikipedia. Apparently, not that she everyone should be, but she's an advocate of marijuana legalization. She has like campaigned on that.
Oh yeah, she's like a full on like socialist.
Hell yeah. I remember somebody saying on Twitter, there's a stupid thread about somebody talking about movies that are kind of what we were saying actually earlier about movies nowadays, sci-fi movies being dystopias, and for some reason, like, these people on Twitter never know what they're talking about. But I remember this kind of like this person was maybe not the main character of the day, but a sub character. They were saying that in this The Fifth Element, Lilu's ultimate decision on humanity, right? Her outlook, and it's like, well, dude, like, the whole entire point is that she ends up saving the universe because she believes in love, right? And like, that's something that, like, I really can't think of any sci-fi film or TV show in recent memory that has had, like, I mean, not even like a kumbaya, let's sit around the campfire and everything will be okay, right? Because there is a fight and there's conflict in that movie, but also, like, there's a reason, like, there's something worth saving, right? Is what Corbin tells her, right? And watching that, especially like just like politically, socially, everything being like feeling like the beginning of some sort of collapse, like, it was really wholesome, man. And I'm not gonna lie, maybe tear up a little bit,
Yeah, I think that there is something nice about it sort of being so big, and like what you said, Leslie, like, it ultimately sort of filters back to just being about the characters. Yes. And yes, there is a firebomb that's about to blow up Earth and everything like that, but I like that all the dominoes are set up basically to be about, like, will they fall in love? Can he tell her he loves her? Yeah. And I think it really works and makes for an effective, ending.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a scene where she looks at where they're back on the way to Earth and she's watching all of this footage from history from Earth, and she decides, like, why save your lives if this is what you do with it, and I don't know, man. I feel like maybe too in the 90s when there was a lot of I mean, I mean, I don't know. I was a kid back then, but I do feel like, there was conflict, right? There was tension, economically, socially for people, and I don't feel like that message like might have rang true, but somehow Luke Benson just managed to say, "Nah, man, we're gonna make like a fun, like blockbuster that your kids can watch and get like a positive message from." And I mean, I did.
Yeah, like in spite of that, we'll
Yes.
acknowledge the bad stuff, but even if it's somewhat trite, it's like all you need is love.
Yeah, all you need is
All
love.
you need is love.
Well, here's the thing. I actually think if he tried to make this movie now, I mean, just the existence of YouTube alone, the type of footage Mila would have seen as
Oh
compared to
God,
then,
man.
like she would definitely have decided the other way. She would definitely have decided to let us all.
Love's not enough.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
would have went to YouTube and like watched a video and started getting weird algorithms and shit. She'd be like, "Nah, you guys are fucked, yo. Like you guys are fucked. I'm not doing anything, yo. I'm not helping you."
Or when she watches those videos, it really feel like a real fear of like an apocalypse or a war or anything like or things coming, because this is a 90s movie and people kind of thought more or less that things were kind of going to go on the same way forever. It's just that yes, we would get flying cars, we would get better technology, but I don't think that the movie, I feel like if the movie was made now, it would have to be a very, very different film. It would have to kind of directly enunciate, more of these overall problems instead of just like you had the idea in the 90s that war in a very amorphous way was bad, but never in like a specific way. And that's kind of how I feel like it comes across here. Maybe that's not, maybe I'm being unfair to Besson, but that's always kind of how it felt to me. It didn't really dig its teeth into it and into it enough.
Yeah. I mean, like too. Yeah, there are definitely like critiques of power and wealth, and but I mean also too. I feel like if he had tried to dive into those more kind of sticky issues, then the film wouldn't have been as fun. Not to say that it couldn't have been. It didn't have to deal with serious issues, but I mean, this is the same film in which like you have Chris Tucker screaming at the top of his lungs. You know what I'm saying? It was just been incongruous.
Oh, I do want to mention, like, the last scene with those stones. Like, if you had written that down, I would be like, that sounds so stupid and
Yes.
boring. But it's like the most tense scene. Like, Bruce Willis light and this, schmuck lighting a match.
Yes.
Is like the most tense moment you'll ever see in a movie.
And I'll say too, like someone who creates narratives and like stories, not even just aesthetically watching films, but when the I think it's the young, what is he like? He's not the priest, but he's like the young. I don't know what his technical title would be.
Boy
But
priest.
the boy
I
priest,
think.
right? When he's like, when they're all freaking out in the pyramid and they're trying to figure out how these stones work, and he just sighs, right? Sighs with like kind of like not relief, but he's stressed out anxiety, and that's when he realizes that he has the wind stone. I mean, just the way that was written, yo, like I was like, oh shit, like it was just so well done, like because it could have been very anticlimactic, right? Where they found out how the stones work by some other way that would have been too convenient, I guess. But like, yeah, based off a very human reaction in this moment of fear and anxiety, and then that leads to saving the universe. I don't know. It was just like for a lot of the things in the beginning and kind of the middle that maybe were a little bit too like, that I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed that little detail.
Yeah, man, it's just a great flick. I absolutely love it. I watch it over and over again. If you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. I believe we're all in unison and giving this one a thumbs up. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, man. I wish more, like we've been saying, I wish more sci-fi films were like this, man. They didn't take themselves too seriously. Had actors
a little more fun. We need more
A little
fun.
more fun. We need actors that, I mean, I don't know what actors we have left in the caliber of I mean, there are people I guess still around the caliber of Bruce Willis, but we need the big action hero to come back who's just gonna be himself while everybody else revolves and orbits around him in as silly, most eccentric ways as it can, like roles as possible.
We need sets. We need extras. Just look at the amount of extras in like the train station scene.
Yes.
That's like more extras than you will see in like 10 Marvel movies. Like it's just absolutely like the type of filmmaking that this just is not done anymore. Like even in films that try to be kind of the same sort of shape, like they're just not as, they just don't have the texture or the detail. Like they're even below like TV from this time period. So
Yeah, and also Leslie, I have to say that your gloss and matte test has proven correct for every
Yes.
single thing in this movie is matte. There is no
Yeah.
gloss. I mean, even in space, when I really like, I'm surprised that Luc Besson didn't like the visuals a lot, because I really did like the alien style, Ridley Scott alien style space destroyers, man. But not even the spaceships, you know, like when you see the reflection of the Earth or the sun have any gloss on them. So again, the theory proves true.
Yes, for people who don't know, my theory is this: good sci-fi is matte, bad sci-fi is gloss. And I've never seen an example of it. In fact, I'm looking at the trailer of Valerian right now. And
Gloss.
of course,
That's why I liked
Oh,
it. That's why I really liked it a lot. I think there's that scene where they're on the skimmer, flying through a city right above water, and it's like so glossy and beautiful with like purples and violets and all this shit. And I'm like, yeah, that looks awesome. But you know, theory proved true.
Well, it does have Rihanna in it too, so maybe I'll take back you should never watch it. But I just wouldn't have don't have.
Well, now I'm definitely gonna watch it. I wasn't gonna watch it before, but you said Rihanna's in it. Now
I think it is worth watching because there's moments, but it's not good overall.
All right, folks, that was Struggle Session. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good one. Peace.
Later.
Like what you hear? Want to hear more? Check us out at patreon.com/struggle session or sesh.plus or strugglesession.substack.com for all our public episodes, commercial free, as well as hundreds of bonus episodes. Thank you to all our listeners for holding us down 5 years strong.